Welcome to our session on identity affirming therapy with Brandon from the Acoma Project. So before I introduce Brandon, the Acoma Project, I want to give a shout out to our partners that we have to thank for helping us make this virtual Sweatworking Summit a possibility. We've got Nix, we've got Miraval Resorts and Spas, and we've got Mad Tasty. And I know we are going to collect attendance for these sessions. Yep, Gina just posted it. So remember, every time you sign into one of these sessions, you get entered for a chance to win an amazing 3-day stay at Miraval Resorts and Spas with you and a friend. Highly recommend. If you wanted to, you could go to the one in the Berkshires and meet Dayla in real life and take one of her sound healing meditations in person. The other shout out we want to give, especially since it's hitting right about that like brunch time here in my central time zone at least, is Humble Nut Butter. So you have gotten one of their little samples in your summit box. I think I got like the sun-dried tomato spread, which is looking really good. And they're inspired by the idea that the nut butters that you have grown up with don't have to be sweet. They can be savory as well. And they can deliver like much more complex layers of spices and flavors than what you probably think of when you think of like just plain old peanut butter. And they wanted us to know that they chose the name Humble for Humble Nut Butter for a few reasons. They think it's an admirable quality in a human and that the world could benefit from a little bit more humility. And then as it relates for food, they want to, sort of make you realize that their food should be honest and real, as well as like nutritious and tasty with minimal ingredients. So they're going for simple yet impactful with their savory nut butters. And if you look in your summit box, you have also gotten a little card with a recipe suggestion on it for the Humble Nut Butter. And the one that I got, I don't know if they're all the same, but was to use it as like a spread for a fried egg breakfast sandwich, which I think I'm going to try after this because it sounds really delicious. So yeah, let us know how you're using your Humble Nut Butter at the end of these sessions. Tag us on Instagram. We're at A Sweat Life. They are at Humble Nut Butter. And our friends at the Acoma Project are at Acoma Project. That's AAKOMA Project. And we'll drop those links in the chats as well. So now what you all came for, we are here to listen to Brandon J. Johnson. He has so many initials after his name. I had to ask him about them. He's an MHS, which I didn't ask because it was so short. Master's in Health Specialist? No.
Master of Health Science. It was
science. Yeah. And then the MCHES, which I practiced. Master's
Certified Health Education
Specialist.
No pressure.
Yep. But he is a subject matter expert with the Acoma Project. And if you're not familiar, the Acoma Project is a mental health nonprofit that is focused on research and outreach for diverse youth, young adults, families, and communities. And at Acoma, they believe that everyone deserves the opportunity to achieve optimal mental health, which is what we based our whole summit on this entire weekend. And Brandon himself he's a subject matter expert. He was supported by an award from the Upswing Fund for Adolescent Mental Health. And he's a big advocate for positive mental health and suicide prevention services for youth and adults across the country, as well as within his local area of Baltimore. So I'm going to let him take it from here and introduce himself, because listening to Brandon talk is going to be much more interesting than reading his bio off a screen from me. But we're going to hear about Do You See Me? The benefits of identity affirming therapy. So Brandon, I will leave it to you to take away.
No problem. Thanks so much, Kristen. I'm so excited to be here. I just want to say thanks on behalf of the Acoma Project for you all having us here. I'm so excited to get into this conversation, and we are too. And I just want to give a shout out to our director and founder, Dr. Alfie Breland-Noble, who does amazing work in mental health for communities of color all throughout this country. So I want to give a shout out to her as well. So excited to be here, really excited to have this conversation. And again, I also want to give a shout out to you all for really wanting to have this conversation around mental health for your summit. So this is awesome, and I'm excited to get started. I do want to say, please, 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 if you have any thoughts, any feedback, any comments, jump in the chat, interrupt me, do whatever you need to do. I really want to interact with you all, answer any questions, hear about your thoughts and feedback. And I'll be asking some questions kind of throughout the presentation, just so we can dialogue, so we can, share our experiences. So our conversation today is really about identity affirming therapy. And so we'll go through this. We're really going to kind of go on a journey, a story, if you will, with this, about what this could mean for so many different people. So it's definitely, we're going to get into some, start with really the why. Like, why is this important? Like, why would we be wanting to have conversations about this? So we'll start there and talk about just kind of where we are in mental health as people, and really get into what this looks like, what the benefits are, and then we're going to end with a bunch of resources. We want you to be able to access your identity affirming therapist if you do not have one. So we'll go through those resources. And if I miss any resource, if you have a resource that you want to get into, definitely put that in the chat also. So we talked really, Kristen talked about the Acoma Project. And so at the Acoma Project, really what we're about is making sure that young people, inclusive of all points of diversity, and we're going to get into those identities today. But regardless of any point of diversity, we want our young people and our young adults to really have access to mental health services and be able to have an environment that really supports them in their mental wellness and mental well-being. And so our job is really to engage with our young people of color, engage with their families, to really help them feel safe, supported, heard, and seen. And you're going to hear me talk about being heard and seen throughout this entire presentation. So our three goals are to raise consciousness, to empower people, and to change the system. We want everyone to be able to see themselves as a part of as a part of the mental health for everyone. So before we get started, what I want to do, this is something I do in most of my presentations, but in case you haven't had anyone ask today, how are you doing? How are things going? So I want, if you're comfortable, again, no pressure, anything that I put out there, totally optional, if you're comfortable enough. But one of the things that we stress, especially working with people and talking about their mental health, is being able to check in with ourselves, right? So checking to see how we're doing, how we're feeling, because it's so easy to say, "Hey, how you doing?" And you're like, "I'm fine," but actually thinking, "How do I feel?" So quick question. What are the three emotions you felt the most in the past 24 hours? Or you can say during the summit. That also works. But if you have one, have two, have three, feel free to drop those in the chat. For me, I'm excited. I'm really excited to have this conversation today. I'm encouraged, hoping that people take something away from this, and maybe use this conversation to find a therapist that they can really feel seen with. And also a little disappointed because right outside this window is a snowstorm that's happening here in Baltimore, that we were only supposed to get an inch of snow, and now we're looking at about 6 inches. So disappointed that I have to shovel immediately after getting off this presentation. But however you feel comfortable, however you want to put that in the chat, and I see the responses coming in now. And so again, it's a range of emotions: energized, relaxed, excited, proud, little anxious, annoyed, motivated, hopeful, tired, energized, hopeful. So many different ones. Thank you all so much for jumping in and putting those in. This is something that I encourage people to do ever so often, right? Take the time to check in with self. And I know you all have had sessions on breath work. You've had sessions on talking about your mental health and breaking the stigma. Like I've seen the conversations you all have had. And so I'm hoping you're taking all this and, finding ways to support yourself as well. So I'll just say simply, If you are feeling positive and put some positive feelings and emotions in the chat, or that you have them yourself, I hope you have strategies and things to keep them there, and I hope it stays there as long as possible. If they're not where you want them to be, I hope that there are some strategies that you may have to shift, and that the emotion and the energy shifts for you in one way or another. So I wanted to start with that. So really just to kind of lay the foundation for where we are. It's been a challenging 2 years, right? It's been quite an interesting 2 years. It was so I don't know if funny is the word, but yesterday, I was on Facebook and got a Facebook memory of this week 2 years ago. And essentially, like, this was like the last week before everything kind of went wacky. So like we were, kind of starting to get into the reality of like this, things are going to change and things are going to be different. So it's been a solid, almost to the day, 2 years, that we've been in these current circumstances. So obviously there have been, we have the COVID-19 pandemic. I think everyone basically knows, how that is. That has changed the way we do things. It's changed our ability to be comfortable in public. It's changed the way we interact with folk, and it's also changed our isolation. So many people have, become more isolated and have experienced those things as well. So it's been different. Also, as a part of that, there have been a lot of, for being open, there's been a lot of, race related, traumas and loss and things that have happened on a very public scale, in this country and in other places. And so for individuals of color, it's been challenging. So there's like the COVID-19 pandemic, then there's additional pressures in terms of race-related traumas and loss and experiences, ones that have not been new since the pandemic in the last 2 years, but one that's kind of been really in the public space for sure. And then with those changes with COVID-19, there's been a ton of economic pressures and changes as well. I think everybody has felt a hit of, inflation, and, gas has been quite the experience recently. I filled up the other day and just like sat and watched it. And I was like, I don't think I've seen this before. So, and then there's been economic pressures as a part of COVID-19. We've had so many businesses and things been upended, especially those who are in the hospitality business, those who are in, restaurants and entertainment and things like that have experienced these challenges as well. And so, we talk about that usually from an abstract point of like, we had the pandemic, all this stuff is happening, like, people are are experiencing these things. But there are specific groups, and we have specific data that shows us, exactly some of the things that we've experienced. And I think it's, always important for us to know, even if they're not our experiences, right, to know what's happening with other people, other groups that make up the society and the community that we're a part of. So we've had unexpected grief and loss. And we've really seen increases in anxiety and depression, specifically in African Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanic Americans during the pandemic, right? So we have like specific data that's connected to this that we've seen as well. And so there's data that suggests from the CDC that around the time that the George Floyd video was shared, that there was an increase in mental health challenges for African Americans, specifically that there were feelings of uneasiness, depression, and anxiety symptoms as well. Asian Americans experience higher rates of hate crimes during the pandemic because of some of the stigma around the COVID-19 virus and, where it originated from and things like that. There was even a Stop Asian Hate campaign during the earlier days of the pandemic that those may remember. And then there have been some new laws that have created some challenges for the LGBTQ plus community in varying different states and places across the country. So again, we may not all share these experiences. We may not have all experience these things or have friends there. But I think it's important for us to understand that we actually have like real data that shows these things have had impact on us. So it's been quite the time, quite the experience for everyone very recently. So with this, to deal with many of these existing challenges and newer challenges, more than ever, people turn to mental health therapists for support. People want to get connected to clinicians because we all have weights, even in our day-to-day basis. Before, if you can remember pre-pandemic, before the pandemic, we all have challenges and things that we experience in life, and our different environments kind of pull those things into play. But so many people felt that this particular time the weight felt different, and so they accessed mental health therapists for support, which is an amazing resource, and we'll get into why. An amazing resource for folks. So I want to stop here and pause for a second to see if just throw it in the chat. Did you start therapy during the pandemic? Like, was this a new thing that you jumped into during the pandemic? Again, if you're comfortable sharing that, throw that in the chat. Or were you already going to therapy and maybe jump back in or increase some of your sessions? I can say personally, so I had a therapist pre-pandemic. And so we were going good, and we have a relationship, and it got to the point before the pandemic, we kind of reduced our sessions. We weren't talking as frequently, and even for a while we kind of stopped because we felt we got to a point where I was good. And sometimes you have to you take breaks from therapy. I can say a couple months into the pandemic, I was right back reaching out to her, getting connected, just because it's been quite a difficult time. So checking into the chat. So we have some people said yes. Some people are considering it now, continued therapy. Hey, Dr. Alfie. I can imagine being a clinician at this point. Just what the requests look like. I couldn't imagine, for that as well. So some people said yes, been thinking about it more, in the market looking for a new one. Yeah, so this is encouraging. This is really great that trying to really get engaged with understanding that this is a new weight. So I'm so excited that so many of you all have taken, and I see some people talking about wait lists and stuff like that too. Again, I could definitely have heard more about wait lists, and we'll get into some of that as well. So it looks like, I'm so glad that so many of you all have thought about this and been encouraged to go. And so for those of you who have gone to therapy, I hope that your experience is this, right? That therapy and being with a clinician is an opportunity for us to bring our complete selves to our clinicians, right? Therapy is designed to be a safe space for individuals to bring their entire selves with them. And we are all made up of different different identities, right? Like we're not just, I know hear people say like, we're all humans, a part of the human experience. Yes, very true. But there are layers to the human experience, right? So whether it be gender identity, whether it be race and ethnicity, whether it be the religious community that you are a part of, whether or not you have some type of neurodivergence. So, whether or not you are coming with a pre-existing mental health condition, or, maybe on, the autism spectrum, and all sorts of different things there, that's a part of, identities as well. Family structures and dynamics. So I'm a dad, full disclosure, I'm a dad. So if you hear anything, it's my two. So I have a 10-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter. So like we're dads, we're step parents, we're grandparents, we're aunts and uncles, we are foster parents, we have taken in and other people, we're volunteers and working with young people and supporting people, we're caregivers, right? Like caregiving is a big part of our identity. I got to do a presentation with a group of caregivers last year, and I learned so much, right, about what that is. But these are all identities and things that we have that we carry with us when we go into the therapeutic session, right? And so with these and bringing these, all of these have different dynamics and different aspects to them, that we're bringing with us. And we want and we hope that the therapeutic setting is the place to bring our full selves with us. And so, and forgive me for these red dots that are popping up on the screen. I have no idea where they're coming from, but so identity affirming therapy is essentially being able to go to a therapist that it could play in two ways. So one, that the therapist that you're going to identifies with the same, any number of identities that you're bringing to to the table. So a lot of times, we talk about this, and it's also called cultural affirming therapy. So that you may hear it, if you look this up, you may hear it that way as well. But essentially is, we're going to a clinician of the same race and ethnicity. We're going to a clinician that may, if we're LGBTQ plus, that we're going to a clinician that identifies as LGBTQ plus. We're going to a specific faith-based therapy, whether it be Christian counseling, et cetera, that we're bringing that, with us, or, we're a mom that has a blended family. You're going to a therapist that can identify with that, that also shares, these identities as well. So that's really what it is. And also, when we talk about identity affirming therapy and culturally affirming therapy, when we're talking about this, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a second, but more also too, that even if the therapist doesn't necessarily share your identity, that they're able to talk about it and guide you through it and be a part of that process, in the therapeutic process of bringing attention to creating the space for you to talk about your identity, your culture, and what it means to you. And we'll talk more about that in a second. So where are the benefits, right? Looking at research, individuals who get connected to therapists that have the same identities, they have better outcomes. The data is clear, and there are a number of reasons why that is, and we'll get into that in a second. And being there are a number of things that happen as a part of that. So individuals have talked about and shared that engaging with a clinician with their identities really gives them the opportunity to feel seen, right? To feel that there are some pieces of our experiences as, part of those identities that is a little hard to explain, right? Like there are some cultural pieces of our identity that we bring to the table that if we had to sit with a person, who may not identify with that culture, there's an extra layer of explanation, of clarification, of it is also, what we say in the literature is like there's a language adjustment, right? So in different, cultures and things, like I said, when I was working with the caregivers, they were talking about some things that I wasn't aware of. They were speaking a different language, but having someone there that you are in this therapeutic journey with, that can relate to what you're saying, and you can understand and get those pieces out, can be very beneficial, and also can also save time in the therapeutic process as well, that we've seen from literature as well, that you don't have to stop to explain certain things or certain phenomena, that therapist, that clinician is coming from a place of shared experience, shared understanding. Even if they haven't walked the exact same line, you have that ability of sharing that process. And so I mentioned this earlier, but therapists who don't have the same identity as a client can absolutely create a safe space for clients while exhibiting cultural humility, right? And so cultural humility in its simplest form is, I do not identify with your culture. It's different from cultural competence, which says, more so like I know enough about your culture that I can be good. So what cultural humility says is, I probably will never know everything about your culture. I probably will never know the ins and the outs of your experiences. I may not know all of the language around your experiences. I may not be able to feel it on a personal level. However, what I want to do is make sure that this space that you're in, that you are comfortable talking about it, that I want to learn what it means to you, right? And giving you the opportunity to engage with it, to talk through it, to not feel judged by it as well. And, for me to, understand as best as I can to help you, kind of, manage through it, but not necessarily like, oh, I've checked the block. It's like, so I know everything about LGBTQ plus culture. Like, boom, I did it. Right. And so getting to that space of allowing people to bring that to themselves as well. So looking at some, some other data and some things that we know is that, so for LGBTQ plus individuals, affirming therapy had a significant positive effect on the quality of the therapeutic process, right? Like this, this was, research that was done with a group of clients, and they expressed that they felt that the quality of the therapy was different when they were able to go to an affirming therapist to talk through some of their experience. And they talk specifically about being able to, share experiences without having to prove those experiences, right? Like without having to say like, this happened, this is real, this is something that we experienced, that the therapist was able to go, yes, I understand that this is something that happens and have experienced that as well. And also faith-based, so therapy with faith-based groups has also been found to be successful as well. So that's something else there. There's a sharing of values and supports and understanding traditions that again don't have to be explained. So individuals feel seen, they feel heard, they feel understood as a part of this process. And so what I want to do now is pause really quickly to see, has anyone had an experience with a therapist that was identity affirming, culturally affirming, and they had this great experience? If you have had that, you don't have to go into detail, whatever you're comfortable sharing in the chat. I would love to understand and hear people's experiences with that if you're comfortable in the chat. I can say for me, for sure. So my therapist is a Black woman, and sharing experiences that I've had at work in my 9 to 5, microaggressions and things that I've, experienced, and, some incidents at work that have made me uncomfortable. I was able to talk, not feel judged. And at, certain points in the conversation, I could say, well, right? Like at a certain point, you're like, I feel like you're, that you've probably encountered something like this, if not exactly this, something like this in your journey as well. And it really does save time in the therapeutic process of feeling like, I can do this as well. So I'm gonna take a peek in the chat. Yes, so Dr. Alfie, I'm definitely going to mention those resources at the end for Acoma Project, absolutely. And so, so people have had these experiences. Someone said that they've had one very affirming, one not so affirming. Someone said they recently changed to an LGBTQ affirming therapist, and that talking is so much easier. I love that. I love seeing that.
I think one that I'm going to call out is that someone had experience with therapists who had other experiences as patients who are also attorneys. So this person is an attorney and found a therapist who has similar patients in that field. And I think that's a pretty interesting perspective too.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's definitely cool to be able to get that. I'm pretty sure that was probably harder to get or to find. So that's awesome. Someone said that this is what they felt like they were missing with their therapist. Definitely happens there as well. Awesome. So going there, let me know if I miss anything. Is trying to go through all the chats. Yeah, absolutely. So Dr. Alfie, 100%, definitely are able to, relate to providers of color, even if they're not the same race. So many of our experiences, whether it be, again, the microaggressions, the racism, the historical trauma, is definitely something that, other groups are able to see that as well. So 100%. So the rapport is built more quickly. We've talked through some of this. The people have said that they feel seen as a full human being with all identities welcome at the table. Another thing, and Dr. Alfie was alluding to this, reducing the risk of being re-traumatized in the therapeutic process. Sometimes, and I know some of you have already mentioned in the chat, sometimes the first therapist you go to isn't the one for you, right? They may not, you may not build that rapport. It may not, be that way. And some people have had really tough experiences, in the therapeutic process, and having someone of the same identity doesn't alleviate all of the risk of, getting a therapist that doesn't work for you, but it does reduce the risk of being, re-traumatized when you're going through those things in the therapeutic process. Lowering the risk of encountering microaggressions and biases. And like I said, oftentimes better mental health outcomes. And like Dr. Alfie said, also having other, therapists of color, if you're a person of color, can also be beneficial as well. So what I wanted to do also, and again, keep plugging things into the chat. I went and kind of went to talk to some different people and groups that have, that have had these experiences, that have had good experiences with an affirming therapist. And so I asked them if they would be willing just to tell me in their own words, like what made that experience the way it was, what made it beneficial, right? And so I'm going to read a couple of these, definitely, look through these as well. One person, Sananda, said that my amazing Black therapist taught me to value myself and my voice and that it matters. I will forever appreciate, I took the person's name out, for that and all the insight that she's pulled into me. Jessica said, my Black woman therapist helped me cope with my father's death. She helped me understand that certain things weren't normal. And here's that piece. Said, I felt understood without having to translate, right? So like that ability to have those conversations without feeling like you have to, go through that as well. So from Brian said that his therapist was their age. So they also experienced some of those cultural similarities in terms of, style and music. So they felt like the vibe there was connected. So it was even an age thing. For Brian as well. Amelia, I love hers as well. For therapy, I chose an African-American woman. I'm going to read this one just because I love it so much. When I walked into her office, the wall was plastered with quotes. I loved it. It was a safe space. I saw myself in her art. When we discussed things, she made me feel safe. I was truly being my authentic self. It was protecting my inner me in a space where it was important to be protected. Absolutely, amazing to hear, these type of experiences as well. And so, these are, some of, the benefits. And again, I could have, I maybe got like 25 responses to this that I could have filled the presentation with if necessary. But these are some of, I wanted it to be real, right? I wanted people to see like there's, this reality of this is what this can look like and what it can feel like. I see something in the chat about code switching. Code switching is, I classify code switching as a weight, because there's code switching, essentially, for those who are viewing this and may not necessarily know what that means, it's feeling like you have to change yourself depending on your environment. That my authentic self is not welcome in this space, so I have to pivot to a different person in a sense. Many people classify it as like putting on a mask to feel like I can be safe in this space. And so having a therapist that's identity affirming, that you feel like you don't have to code switch, absolutely is amazing. So it wouldn't be right if we didn't talk about young people, because this is Acoma, right? So with this, identity affirming therapy is beneficial for young people as well. We also have information and data, and again, Acoma has done a lot of this, or we've done a lot of this ourselves, but really engaging with young people and understanding that BIPOC young people and LGBTQ plus youth have better outcomes in therapy when culture is incorporated into the sessions. So allowing our young people also, and again, we work with young people, with Acoma, and work with them, directly, and get feedback from young people all the time. And, young people, there's a piece of our young people that don't feel seen already, just naturally. And if we can put ourselves back in, back in those spaces, we can remember that we didn't we didn't feel seen either. And so, like, as we're engaging our young people and they're getting connected to mental health services and things like that, we definitely understand that there's a benefit for our young people also. So we want to make sure that we are thinking of them as we're looking for therapists for them as well. So there's a question from Haley. It says, if we had to prioritize, would we choose identity affirming therapists versus situational, like grief, cancer, et cetera? That's a really good question. I think it really depends on where your needs are at that time. So if you're going because of a specific situation, and a specific thing that you want to get resolved, I definitely feel like if that's the priority, and you're able to find a therapist that can take you on your schedule and really is specialized in whatever thing that you're looking for. If they're, I think it's a plus if you can find both. If you can find both, I absolutely think it's a plus. And if not, I think just prioritizing what where the need is in that in that situation. So that's where I would go with that one. But that's definitely it's definitely great. Yeah, I agree with Gina. For sure. And yes, intersections are definitely great. And yeah, Dr. Alfie, I totally agree. And I think this is where we are with the wait list, right? Like, people are having to make these decisions. Once, two, and I'm not going to jump on this soapbox for for long, but there aren't enough mental health clinicians of color or of these other identities in the country. There is a shortage, right? So there's I know specifically when it comes to African Americans, for clinicians, I think we're at 6 to 8%. And I know for sure for psychologists and psychiatrists, it's under 2% in the country. So like there is a shortage there as well, for sure. So again, if you're, to this point, if you're not able to find a therapist that identifies with your specific identity that you want to bring, or really include as a part of your experience, still consider going. We don't want people not to try to to do this experience and to get the benefits of a mental health clinician if they're not able to find one that fits their identity. But this is where we have a tool to interview your therapist. I believe strongly in, interviewing therapists. I think a lot of us, when it comes to physical health, we will, and I know, you guys work a lot on fitness. When you're trying to get a trainer, you're gonna look at multiple trainers. You're gonna get reviews. You're gonna look and see what works for you. When we're trying to find a specialist, we're gonna compare. There's a health grade site. Like we're gonna really do the work. And so the same thing should be for our clinicians. We want to make sure that we're going into an environment that we're going to be seen. We're going to be heard, and we're going to feel supported. We're going to feel like we're going to get something out of this process. So I want to give you just a couple options of some things that that you can ask a potential therapist. I left some blank because obviously the specific identities are going to vary from person to person. But just a couple examples. Are you equipped to support me with topics around blank. What are your experiences with clients who have experienced X or identify as Y? Do you have any biases or values that would conflict with you engaging in topics around blank? How do you handle uncomfortable conversations with clients regarding their lived experience? So again, everything, some conversations with folks can be uncomfortable, even clinicians, that talk about this, they may not feel equipped to handle every specific thing, which, someone mentioned earlier about if you need something specifically around grief and trauma, definitely engaging to see if that's something that they can do. If you're going, like, I have issues with like my childhood trauma I want to get through, make sure that they're able to address it, right? Make sure that they're able to have those conversations. Do you specialize in, so that's, the same kind of conversation. And back to the cultural humility thing, are you capable of exhibiting cultural humility when encountering topics regarding culture that you're unfamiliar with? These, I promise you, and any clinician that's here, and Dr. Alfie in the chat, for sure, back me up, would love to have these, to get these questions up front, to know that this, and Gina, yes, take a picture of this, do whatever you need to do with this. I'm sure Dr. Alfie is good with that. So, really be able to, address these things up front, because the therapist also wants to be able to help, right? So if we're able and being upfront of like, these are where my needs are, like, this is what I'm thinking of. These are the things that I really want to address. Like, I want to talk about racial trauma. I want to talk about microaggressions. I want to talk about what society feels like to me. I want to talk about, whether it's political things, like whatever you're bringing to the table. I want to talk about being a caregiver for, my parent. Like, is that, like, can we do this in this space, right? We want people to feel that they have control. We talk about it even in physical health, about bringing up and encouraging clients to have power and to understand. And I see Dr. Alfie put it there, to be empowered, right? To have these conversations, because we want anything that we're doing with any type of clinician, any type of specialist, we want it to be successful. And so part of it is asking those questions up front. Um, so I also, want to say too, that in some instances, we have, people who are, in maybe a therapeutic setting that just isn't working, right, for them as well. I saw some of it in the chat earlier, and, people saying that they feel that where they are right now, that their therapist may not be identity affirming, right, and may not be able to support those things. After having that conversation, I feel like, if you want to move forward, engage them and ask them, this is what I need. I feel like, we may not have been doing this so far. This may not have been as supportive as I wanted to be. And if you feel like that isn't happening, it's also okay to find a new therapist. And I really just wanted to say that out loud, because it's, it feels like a different thing, right? It feels tough. Like, it's not a comfortable conversation to say that I don't think this is working. But I want you to know that it is okay to do that. It is okay to have that conversation. Emily put in the chat, is it okay to ask a therapist anything about their personal life? I love to find another mom, and ideally someone who started in a corporate environment. That's a really good question. So some therapists, even on their websites and things, may disclose those things, and others may not. I definitely feel like it's something that you could ask, but it's really up to the clinician about whether or not they want to disclose. So you may ask that question, and you may get a clinician that says, that's not something that I'm comfortable, sharing in that, at this time. And that's totally okay. You can make your decision kind of moving forward with that. It all depends on the clinician. And my clinician, my therapist, like, I know, like, she's a mom, I know she's married, I know, and that was her being, feeling like that was something that she was comfortable enough disclosing with me. And so I think it really depends on the therapist. And again, I wouldn't, don't feel, embarrassed or anything like that if the therapist says that that's not something that they want to disclose. You know, our clinicians are human too, and there's some things that they may want to keep guarded, and we don't know what their lived experience is as a clinician, right? Like that's a whole nother ball game. So they could have had a bad experience in disclosing it to a client and having something come up that went in a way that they weren't expecting. So so definitely, to understand it. And again, I think it's okay to ask. I think just understanding that there may be a boundary there that they may not want to disclose. For sure. Gina said, I stayed in a therapy relation too long when it wasn't a fit. I've been there. What's the best way to break it off, and what's the instinct to listen to? I think the instinct to listen to is just your gut. I think there are, certain things like I think most of us go into the therapeutic relationship with some type of expectation, some type of desire, something we want to talk about, something we want to improve, general just like maintenance of our mental health, like all those things. We kind of go into it with some expectation and with some goals. And if we shouldn't, we probably should. Write those down. Another thing to say too. Also talking to myself. But with that, if you feel like those things aren't being met, you don't feel supported, you're not feeling any growth, you're feeling like you're not getting strategies that may be beneficial, you feel like you're not improving, things are being challenging. If you're getting those and you feel in your gut that the progress that you wanted is not happening, that may be the point to move forward. So you can either have a conversation with your clinician and say, this is what I want to happen. I just want to be clear about this. Like, let's see if we can move towards those. And if it doesn't, definitely, that's something that you could say. And honestly, the best way is just being upfront and understanding like this is, and being upfront with the clinician and just saying, these were my expectations. This is what, I was looking for. I feel like this fit hasn't gotten me to the goals that I was, hoping for as a part of this. And, so I feel like it's best for me to move in a different direction. And again, therapists they've experienced it before, right? They understand what that is, and it's an opportunity for them, for growth as well. So I think just being upfront, having that conversation is probably the best way to go. And Melissa said, I'm a year and a half into working with a new therapist. I sometimes struggle with knowing what to talk about when I'm doing well and don't have an immediate issue at hand or don't feel like rehashing the same thing over and over. I struggle with asking my therapist to guide me in certain topics. Any advice on how to use the time constructively or continue to work to better myself, even the days I feel mostly good? Really good point. It's that definitely can be challenging. I've hit those, when I was talking about that break before the pandemic with my therapist, that's where we were, right? One, and I'm going to steal this quote from my wife. She says that she's never regretted going to therapy, right? Never regretted going to a session, even when, she doesn't necessarily have like the thing to talk about or the weight to talk about. Sometimes it's just good just to start talking, right? There may be some things that even come out, naturally, like even if there's, things about, society and worldview things, which I share a lot with my therapist about those things. And it may go into a conversation around some of those other pieces that you have as well. So I would definitely say, really go into it, put your best foot forward and, just start the conversation, and you never know where it could end up. But that is a natural thing to happen. And if you feel like it's happening too much, you can also change frequencies. That's also something. So my therapist and I, we meet every other week. So that's kind of what works for us. And so, think through that too. There may be some conversations there that you can have with your therapist about like what you think will work best for you. Okay. Oh, Melissa, we could I could do a whole nother session about talking about wins. For sure. That's something that I had to learn how to do in celebrating self, but in the interest of time, I don't have the time to do it. So these are just some ideas about some times that may be good to go into therapy. So if you're seeing things with yourself, like increased sadness, grief, loss of excitement with activities, like the same things that you're used to doing don't feel the same, that may be a time to go. Loss of appetite, overeating. So this is another list, and I tell people just to trust your judgment, trust your judgment. When you feel like you're not feeling yourself and you want to improve it, trust that feeling and see if getting connected to a therapist may be a good idea. So I want to hop into resources, and then I will be out of your way. First, to start with us, at Acoma, we have a bunch of free resources on our website. I definitely encourage anyone to jump. And I know our website was shared at the beginning, but Kristen, if you could throw it back in the chat, that would be awesome. So if anyone's interested in connecting to those free resources there, and if you have a teenager or a young adult and you're in need of mental health supports, definitely go to our website. There's an ability to register for some free virtual sessions. And so we want people to take advantage of these supports and these resources. So please check out our website. Please follow us on Twitter, Acoma Project, at Acoma Project. At same for Instagram, like follow us, like anything that we're working on. And Dr. Alfie's engaged in so much in getting more resources and more experiences and talks for our community. So definitely get connected there so you're able to follow all of the resources coming out as well. So we definitely want people connected there as well. So again, those dots are killing me. But here's some other resources to find a supportive therapist. Psychology Today is a really good one, just because their list, they verify many of their clinicians, and you can filter your clinician by specialty. And people also report their race or ethnicity. It's a really good way to really understand and find a therapist as well. And so some specific ones, Loveland Foundation is another one, helping, and they also have a fund to support Black women and girls seeking therapy. So they actually have a fund that you can apply for to get funds specifically for you to go to therapy. So it also works in that financial piece as well, as Acoma's free sessions do. Also, their therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men. They have directories and support. Black Men Heal, which we've done some work with as well through Acoma. They have a directory for therapists supportive of Black men, so check them out. Therapy for Latinx, so connecting the Latinx community to supportive therapists, is also another one. Again, take pictures of all these. You throw any of these into Google, their website will come right up. So definitely go there as well. Estoy Aquí was founded in March 2020 and provides suicide prevention and social justice education to organizations. And they also have a resource list as well for the Latinx and African American communities. Bridges was one that I actually just recently came across, that has a mental health hub for Asian, Pacific Islander, and South Asian Americans. It's specifically in New York, so caveat. But definitely the resources, the therapist list is based in New York, but the resources are national. And then there's a national queer and trans therapist color network, which has a really great directory and resources of identity affirming therapists that work across that intersection of LGBTQ plus individuals and communities of color. So I want to just close by just saying thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for you all being so engaged in the chat. It is possible to find a therapist that's beneficial for you, that will help you, that you can feel safe, that you can feel connected to, that you have the ability to be your best self with. And so I I hope that each of you finds that. I hope you're able to get that. And again, Acoma is a resource for you. Please don't hesitate to reach out, get connected to us. And with that, I'll say thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon. So that wraps up our Saturday sessions, everybody. Make sure that you add your name to the attendance sheet that Mia just linked for that extra entry to Miraval.
Oh, wait, Kristen, I forgot. Yeah,
page.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Alfie. So I have a YouTube page called the Black Mental Wellness Lounge. That's a pandemic baby myself, and it's really a YouTube page where I bring on Black clinicians, Black community members, really to have conversations around mental health in the Black community. So just go and look up the Black Mental Wellness Lounge, find us on YouTube. We have about 40 videos up. Did one with Dr. Alfie also. So I definitely encourage folks to subscribe to that. So thank you for Dr. Alfie. Appreciate that.
I think I found, yep. Here come the links. We did it. It started autoplaying. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So that wraps up our sessions for today. Remember, if you have some humble nut butter for lunch or for a snack later today, make sure to take a picture and tag us so we can share the love on social media. And we will see you all tomorrow morning. So our first event tomorrow morning starts at 9 a.m. Central. Don't forget the time change. It's going to happen overnight tonight. I know someone's going to forget it. I know I'm going to get an email being like, wait, where's the recording? I forgot about the time change. I told you about the time change. So no, I'm kidding. But we're really looking forward to wrapping up our sessions tomorrow, starting off with a really fun dance cardio workout that we have planned. So thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Acoma. Dr. Alfie, it was nice to see you in the comments. And everyone go have a great rest of your day.